Hi, I'm so glad to be here with you, Debra. Thank you for agreeing to come on and have a conversation together. Debra is a faith forward licensed professional counselor. She's a national speaker. She's the author of 8 books, and she's currently writing her 9th book. She's the host of the Talk to Me podcast and creator of the #1 faith based relationship blog called True Love Dates. And from what I understand, your overarching message is healthy people equal healthy relationships.
You got that right. That was a very thorough introduction, and it's so good to be here with you.
Well, thanks. I have the utmost respect for Debra because she's not only a professional in a space where we need wisdom and understanding, but you communicate it so well, Debra. And when I hear you speak, I just think, oh, could I sit down with her for a couple hours and pick your brain?
Oh,
So I'm
thank
happy
you.
to be here with you. Today, your latest book is a children's book, which is pretty amazing to take all your adult knowledge. Look how beautiful this book is. It's called Any Day Emotions. And look at this. I got a copy. Debra, I'm so impressed with the quality of the book. I mean, just the artwork and how thick and glossy the pages are and how pretty it is. I mean, my granddaughter just wants to pick this up because it's beautiful.
I love hearing
You
that.
did a great job in putting it together. I mean, obviously, what's really important is the message that's
Yeah.
in here. So, as a professional counselor who probably mostly talks to adults,
Yeah.
why did you decide to write a children's book?
Well, that's a good question. So, I would say that primarily I'm a mom. And, before my work as a counselor, I'm a mom of 4 kids, ages 4, 9, 13, and 15. So we have a child in every stage right now. We've got a preschooler, an elementary schooler, a middle schooler, and a high schooler.
Nice.
And not only that, but we're a homeschooling family. So some people don't know that about us, but we homeschool. So the kids are home all the time. We're
Yes.
together
Yes.
a lot. They're together a lot. And so the concept of being emotionally healthy is just something that I'm really passionate about as a licensed counselor. But I really think that emotional health starts with the parents and overflows down into the kids. And so as I'm writing to parents and as I'm ministering to adults about mental and emotional health, I didn't want to neglect the importance of emotional health in kids because all of these conversations have to start at a really young age.
Hmm.
So when I got the opportunity to write this kids book, I took it. I think the hardest part was condensing everything I wanted to say into 900 words because, as you know, Michelle, when you're writing a book for adults, it's usually between 40,000 to
Right.
70,000 words.
You can say a lot.
You can say a lot. And now I'm like, I have to condense it to 900 words. So that was probably the hardest part. I really wanted it to rhyme because I just recall the children's books that we've read over and over again and the ones that have gotten stuck in my children's brains, even up to age 15. Ella can quote some books from when she
Wow.
was 2, but especially the ones that rhyme and they have this cadence. So it was important to me for it to be a book about emotions and navigating emotions in a healthy way that rhymes, that can stick with kids, and hopefully, like you said, that they'll want to go back to again and again.
Yeah. So I don't know. I didn't look up to see if this was actually a study, but so we have 6 children. We homeschooled our kids too, for the most part.
Yeah.
At the tail end there, the last 2 went to school in junior high because I was so tired. But one of the things my girlfriend, she had little boys, and she read something that boys have an awareness of like 3 emotions, that they just weren't aware that there were so many things that they were feeling, so they couldn't express it. It was like they knew if they were happy, they knew if they were sad, and they knew if they were mad. And any other emotion, her little boy, she just felt like she couldn't tap into that with him. Does that ring a bell at all, that our children aren't aware of what our emotions are?
I would say that boys and girls both have a capacity for a lot of different emotions. And I would say both genders need help being able to recognize, name, and access those feelings. And I do think there are some personality differences. I think some kids tend to be a little bit more internally aware, where others tend to be more internally unaware. And I think it's more personality, maybe a little genetics. But I think the main issue is our cultural conditioning and what we
Hmm.
expect boys and girls to be like. So we don't necessarily cultivate boys and their emotions in the same way that we cultivate girls and their emotions just because of cultural norms. But in our home, the boys are definitely the ones that have emotions and big emotions, and they're aware of their emotions, because I really think it's not necessarily a gender thing. I think it comes down to partly their internal wiring, personality, experience, training, and you put all those things in a blender, and that's what creates emotionally healthy or emotionally unhealthy people in the end. So it's been interesting as a mom of three boys and a girl to see some of those norms, those cultural norms look different. But working with clients, I work with a lot of men as well. And I think what it comes down to is teaching our boys and our girls how to recognize, name, access, but most importantly, how to respond to emotions in a healthy way. Maybe that's where we sometimes miss the mark in this generation. I think we live in a generation where we want to understand, express, and name our feelings. We're all about that because maybe in the previous generations, we weren't aware. We didn't
Hmm.
access, we didn't name, we didn't acknowledge. But the problem is, it's not enough just to access and express our emotions. We also have to learn how to respond to them in healthy ways, right? And I think that's a big key that our generation is missing. It's like, well, just express your feelings. Well, we can't just express our feelings. We
Right.
have to respond to them in healthy ways. And there's unhealthy ways and healthy ways to respond to feelings.
Do you think as parents we have it in our head that we want to fix the feeling?
I think oftentimes we want the feeling to go away as fast as possible.
Hmm.
And maybe that does mean fixing it. Or for others, it could be, I just don't have a tolerance for this whining, for
Right.
this anger, for this crying. So if they're whining, I'm going to fix it as fast as possible by giving them what they want so they stop whining, rather than what is happening here. How do I help them pay attention to it? How do I teach them to respond to it in a healthy way? How do I respond to this feeling in a healthy way? Because oftentimes what we don't realize is our children trigger feelings inside of us.
Right.
And if we don't have emotional health, then we're not going to be able to respond to our emotions in healthy ways and then teach them how to respond in healthy ways. So I actually think, looking back, maybe it was a good idea that I started by writing to the parents first,
Okay.
because we're the main ingredient.
Right.
Children model what they see in us. There was this really interesting study where you've probably seen it on Instagram. There's these trending videos where, I don't like this at all, but I'm just kind of explaining these trending videos where a parent will have a child, and there was one trending video where the mom would bang her hand on the wall and pretend like it was the baby bumping his head, when really the baby didn't bump its head. It was the
Oh,
mom making a noise, hitting the wall, and then acting scared. So the mom would say, "Oh my goodness, are you okay?" And then the baby would see the mom's reaction. And even though his head didn't get hit, he heard a loud noise and he sees his mom freaking out. So the baby would start to cry.
right.
And it just, the idea of these Instagram reels were to show like the influence. Like you can make your kid cry. You can even pretend to be scared of something, and then the child feels scared and starts to cry even though there's nothing to be scared of. Those Instagram reels, as strange and abnormal and unhealthy as I thought they were, are actually confirmed by science. Science and psychology and research shows that Children model the feelings they see in their parents, the response they see in their parents. They mimic it, they mirror it when they get hurt, when they have a temper tantrum, when they're scared. All of these things are things that they learn. And so, as parents, when we learn how to navigate and respond to the signal of our emotions in healthy ways, we can then teach our kids how to respond to the signal of their emotions in healthy ways as well.
What would you think of, because I picked up the book and I thought, okay, if I'm a parent reading this and I realize that inspiring my child to name their emotion, what would you say to that parent who's realizing I'm not handling my own emotions very well? This is really uncomfortable. That I now am very aware of how I felt, like the inner child in me.
Yeah.
How can a parent actually help their child manage their emotions when they're discovering that they need help with their own?
I would say my first thought would be congratulations. You're normal, you're human. And I think God allows us to heal in layers. And sometimes when we have children and we're teaching them things, it's an invitation for us to acknowledge and address and heal the inner child inside of us too. And maybe we do it in tandem, you know? So rather than feel ashamed of it, I see it as an invitation to do something that you've never done before. And that is a beautiful thing, for your eyes to be opened to this area of your life that has been neglected. And what a beautiful journey for you to go on. You know, there's so many good resources. I've written a lot of books. Are You Really Okay? Reset and Soul Care for adults, to
Okay.
help them, on their journey of naming their feelings, being emotionally healthy. I think the key is for us to realize that an emotion is simply a signal. It's God's way of telling us to pay attention to something. And even Jesus, according to biblical scholars, had 39 different emotions as
Hmm.
evidenced in scripture that he felt and expressed. Jesus himself. So again, we know it's not a gender thing if Jesus himself, who is a male, a Middle Eastern male at that, had all of these feelings, and he allowed himself to feel the feelings, but the key was he responded to those signals in healthy ways. I think sometimes we want to dismiss the signal, we want to ignore the signal, but if we do that, it has to get stronger and stronger and stronger. If an emotion is God's way of getting us to pay attention, then the emotion has to get stronger and stronger and stronger in order for us to pay attention to what God wants us to pay attention to. And so teaching our kids that emotions are just a signal. And one thing that comes with any day emotions is I wrote a 10-page guide for parents. It's called A Parent's Guide to Helping Your Kids with Their Feelings. And I spent some time just coaching and guiding parents with some activities and deeper conversations and drawing activities and questions they can ask their kids, because I think sometimes parents in and of themselves don't feel fully equipped. So I'm hoping that this resource can be used by moms and dads to give them a little bit of a background of the purpose of feelings, what to do, what to ask, to help them feel a little bit more equipped, whether or not this is a new conversation for them.
Yeah. What about the family, the husband and wife, where one of them is very tuned into their emotions and feelings and the other one isn't? And so that other parent would never pick this book up, would just say, I'm not reading that. What do you do when one of you is leaning into that and the other one is actually wanting to push it away and maybe even make fun of it?
Yeah. Well, I know that the reason we do what we do, is complex. If I came across a parent who was really had an adverse reaction to emotions or wanted to avoid them or didn't think that emotions were important, I would say your job as the other spouse isn't to convince them. That's God's job. Your job is to be as healthy as you can possibly be as a parent,
Mm-hmm.
to change your ingredients and not be fixated on changing your spouse's ingredients. And I always remind people that, Relationships and marriage and parenting, it's like a big recipe. And though you can't change the ingredients that your spouse brings to the table, you can change the ingredients that you bring to the table. And when you do that, it has the power to influence the whole recipe. So don't be discouraged if it's just you doing the work, because you're modeling it, you're living it. And I also think you should be praying about it. You should really be praying about it, because that's the ingredient that is in your control.
Mm-hmm.
And to become as healthy as you can be standing alone, and to fill in that gap and try to change and influence the recipe in the ways that you can. And I've often seen that to start to affect the whole family.
Hmm.
But if a spouse was seriously that adverse to it, I'd probably be worried about other areas in their life. I'd probably be worried about their marriage, their
Right?
personal health. A lot of other things would probably come to the surface too.
Right. Yeah, I know. I can see that. I want to say one of the things in the book that's unique that I thought was really great was the analogies that you use to try to help the child understand what that emotion might look like or feel like.
Yeah.
Like you wrote down that you compared worry to an earthquake and how earthquakes can make everything feel undone, moving around and shaking, and it's just you don't really know how to respond.
Yeah.
And the other one was anger like a volcano, which I
Yeah.
thought was amazing. So, do you think that, like in reading that, do you think that children recognize what these emotions are? And how would we use that? I'm thinking of if you had a little girl who was worried, is it wrong to say, honey, I think you might be worried? Is that projecting an emotion on her, or is that helpful?
I think it's helpful to offer them options. Like,
Okay.
this is what this feels like. Could you be feeling this? Could you be feeling this? Do you think you're embarrassed? Do you think you're worried? Do you think you're scared? And believe it or not, kids are much more insightful than I think we give them credit for.
Mm-hmm.
And I have just found that starting these conversations, even at a young age, so this book is really great for 2 to 8 year olds,
Okay.
sitting down with them and helping them identify what these feelings feel like. It's kind of like kids learning to identify colors. They have no idea what is red and what is blue
Hmm.
until they start to see, well, red looks like this and blue looks like this, and these objects are red and these objects are blue. And then it's like, oh, now I know, because now I have words and definitions. And it's the same with our feelings. It's, this feeling looks like this, it feels like this, it acts like this. And this one looks like this and feels like this and acts like this. And that's why I thought the analogies of things in nature,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of young kids understand things in nature, like, oh, an earthquake shakes the ground, a volcano explodes, quicksand makes you sink deep, deep down and into the quicksand. And peace feels like a lake that's calm and serene. You're just floating on the water. Things that kids can relate to help them identify, okay, I do know what that feels like. It feels like worry is like my mind shakes and my belly quakes, and the anxious thoughts whirl all around. Like, okay, I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to feel that uneasiness in my belly, in my body, in my mind. And my hope is that those analogies stick with them, that they can identify, okay, that's what that feels like, and gives them a picture. Sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
remember pictures so much easier than we remember definitions. So maybe thinking of that picture of the volcano, of, yeah, that's what it feels like. I remember when my 13-year-old Eli was a little bit younger and starting to name his feelings and understand. His primary feeling that he would struggle with was anger. And so when the volcano would explode, we would sit down and map out, well, what was underneath that volcano? What was all the different things that were building up today? The pressure was just building and building until it makes its way to the sky, according to Any Day Emotions. And so it's like, well, 15% of that was when my little brother took the last waffle this morning. And then 10% of that was because I couldn't figure out my homework assignment. And 20% of that was because, and he would just kind of go through his day and talk about the buildup. but it helped him articulate, okay, here's what was actually going on. I was actually feeling this, and then this happened, and this happened, and this is the buildup, and what could I've done differently? Where could I have released some of that pressure? Where could I have shared some of that pressure so that the volcano didn't explode the way that it did? And even as a 13-year-old, sometimes he'll sit down and say, Mom, let me tell you what's going on in my volcano right now. So it's
Nice.
given him the ability to articulate and talk through it and what's the pressure underneath the surface. And it's backfired. I remember one time we were in the car as a family and we were having a tense moment where everyone was kind of annoyed at everyone. And so Eli breaks the silence by saying, why don't we all go around and talk about how we're feeling?
No.
And so he said, Dad, why don't you go first? And my husband said, Eli, I'm feeling angry. And Eli said, well, Dad, what's underneath that volcano? And it was, we all actually like laughed that in that moment. It broke the ice, but it was just the idea that he's a young boy, but he's picking up on this language and realizing that there's more to it. There's more
Yeah.
to it. Like, let's go a little bit deeper. Let's talk about it. Let's share. Let's connect. And so my hope is for families that these conversations become commonplace. It's not awkward, it's not weird, it's just part of our everyday lingo so that we can develop a generation
Hmm.
of emotionally healthy kids.
Well, that sounds great. I am on the outside looking in at a lot of
Mm-hmm.
parenting now because my kids are all grown and four of them have children. And I'm hearing them and their friends talk about gentle parenting. And it seems to be a parenting that's all about talking to your children, recognizing that they have what they're calling big emotions. But it also seems like there's not consequences. And it's all about taking the time to just explore every little detail. And from what it looks like sometimes is like the family is maybe hijacked by what's happening with the one child because we have to stop and deal with it. I mean, are you familiar with the whole concept of gentle parenting? And what would you add to that and your book and the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
topic?
I am familiar. And I would say that gentle parenting in its ideal form is very healthy. The problem is it's often misguided and misinterpreted to mean passive parenting.
Okay.
And that is not a healthy approach to parenting. Letting your kid do whatever they want, react however they want, respond to their emotions however they want is passive parenting, not gentle parenting. And I would say true gentle parenting is authoritative parenting. Not
Hmm.
authoritarian, my way or the highway, but authoritative, meaning these are the roles in the home. This is what's expected of you. And when you don't do what's expected of you, there are consequences and they're consistent consequences. So it's not letting your kid do whatever they want, it's gently guiding them and leading them with discipline and consistency. So I think where it gets tricky is when we confuse gentle parenting with passive parenting, which I see happen a lot on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, where a kid will have a temper tantrum and the parent just gives them whatever they want. And it's gentle parenting because, we just want to make sure that we don't, they shouldn't be having a temper tantrum and we're in the middle of the store and I don't know what else to do. And so I guess this is good because I don't believe in spanking. So gentle parenting would mean just give them what they want. That's not gentle parenting. That's permissive/passive parenting. And that's not going to lead to healthy outcomes.
If I was that parent sitting in your office, do you have resources that you recommend to help them understand? I know we had parenting books when we were raising our children, and I don't know what's out there anymore.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite resources is called 8 Steps to Better Behavior
Hmm.
by Dr. Barkley. And it's a really, really great resource that is gentle parenting focused, but very systematic.
Okay.
I would also remind parents, you know, it's important for our kids to understand their feelings, but then to respond in healthy ways. That's the key. So, responding in healthy ways isn't just giving you what you want at the cash register at the grocery store because you're throwing a fit.
Mm-hmm.
Responding in healthy ways might mean letting them cry because they're not calming down until we get to the car, but not giving in. It might mean, you know what, you probably want this chocolate bar because you haven't eaten anything today. So I'm going to help you bring your body to baseline. I'm going to help you respond to your feelings in healthy ways, because as a 2-year-old, as a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old, you don't know how to respond to your feelings in healthy ways. So maybe you need a snack, maybe you need a drink, maybe you need a nap, maybe you need a hug. Let's show you how to respond to this feeling in a healthy way, not just let it take over your life or my life. And so I think the key when our kids, especially, are having a temper tantrum is to teach them how to bring their body back to baseline, how to calm down. Trying to be logical with a temper tantruming child is illogical. It's not
Right.
going to work. You can't be logical when their brain is offline, but you can help them bring their body back to baseline. And then when they're calm, we talk about it. We don't just pretend it didn't happen. Hey, what you did in the store was inappropriate. That's not okay to act like that. When you want something, you were probably hungry, and I'm glad we got you a healthy snack. But here's the consequence. Or if this happens again, here's what you can expect will happen, so that they begin to learn and have consistency in discipline and in expectation. Otherwise, we're being passive parents, you know?
Okay.
So passive parenting is just as unhealthy as a parent who screams at their child telling them to calm down while they're screaming, you know? Like,
Right.
both sides of the spectrum lean towards unhealthy in different ways for different reasons.
Well, I think that's really helpful to recognize that um, there might be a consequence. I'm thinking of the child that gets angry and hits his sister. I mean, I don't
Definite
know, Deborah. I
consequence.
mean, when I'm raising my children, we didn't accept that. But
Right.
yes, they're angry about a reason. So I would want to flesh out what that reason was, but I would also want them
Exactly.
to know, however we were going to handle it. There's a consequence. You're in your room for the rest of the
Yeah.
night, or what? You
The
lose this
anger is
privilege.
not the issue. It's not the anger. The Bible even says you can be angry, but don't
Yeah.
sin. It's not the anger. The emotion is not a sin. It's how you respond to that emotion. Jesus responded to every emotion in a holy and righteous way. And we're expected to do the same. And there's a learning curve. We're not perfect, but hitting is not a healthy response to an emotion. You know, hurting someone is not a healthy response to an emotion. Hurting myself is not a healthy response to an emotion. Being disrespectful is not a healthy response to an emotion. And when the emotion is, we're back to baseline, there should be a consequence for the response, not for the emotion itself. You can be worried, you can be angry, you can be frustrated, you can be sad, but you still have to respond to those feelings in healthy ways. And I think that's the key here. Even as you're reading through Anyday Emotions, you'll see there's, in some cases, it'll say, well, here's what you could do with your anger. You can let
Hmm.
it build up and pretend it's not there. Or you can find someone to share it with. You can respond. You can release the pressure in healthy ways. So it's not the emotion that we're worried about, but it's how you respond to the emotion that leads you down healthy territory or unhealthy territory.
Great. So I think it's fair to say that you wrote this book as a tool to help families help their children understand their emotions, and also for an objective tool that we can take with our children and say, it sounds like you might be feeling like this. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it'll give them the opportunity to say, well, yeah, I'm actually feeling this, and point to this page. I'm feeling this inside. I heard from a mom recently who said she was having a moment, just having a moment. And her little 4-year-old brought the book to her and said, Mommy, are you feeling this? And he pointed to the feeling with the storm, this sad rainy day. And she just thought it was so sweet that he took the initiative to come and say, Mom, could you be feeling this?
Hmm.
And like, he's starting to recognize that this emotion looks and feels like this, and this emotion looks and feels like that. So that is my hope, that it's a tool to connect families. It's a tool to give language. It's a tool to begin the conversations of feeling the feelings, but then responding to them in healthy ways.
Well, and what I heard you say right there was, it is healthy and okay for parents to let their children know they have emotions too.
Absolutely.
They're not making them feel insecure because mom has emotions, but actually it's probably making them feel more secure.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Great.
you're normal. We're all human. We all have feelings and it's okay. We can talk about them. And the key is for us to all learn how to respond to these God given signals in ways that honor God, self, and others.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm going to put a link to your book in the show notes to Any Day Emotions. And then you also referenced a few books that might be helpful for us as parents to dive into if we're recognizing that we need a little help with our emotions. So those were three. One of them was Soul Care,
Soul Care, Are
Reset.
You Really
Oh,
Okay?
okay.
And Reset.
Okay, so I'll link those in the show notes too. So to wrap it up, is there anything else you'd like us to know about your work or your book or how we can find you?
Well, I would say the last thing is, sometimes parents feel they could use some deeper help or support in these areas, or they feel like their family is not at a healthy place. I have an amazing team of Christian counselors that are all clinically informed and trained. And
Hmm,
if the Debra Fileta Counselors Network, if anyone ever feels like that is a resource that they need and they don't know where to find a good counselor, you can learn all about that and all the different resources at my website, Debra Fileta, Fileta.
awesome. Thank you.
With
Thanks so
you.
much.
Thanks for having me.